System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' in the city left.
Today is Thursday, July 25th. My name is Amin TMK for Inner City Left, with Inner City Left co-founder and geopolitical expert Amoja Lil Tanky Sumler. Y'all may see the title on below, and many people have been. This has sort of been all over the news, at least all over my timeline. My timeline on at Inner City Left. So Amoja, I'm gonna just go ahead and throw it to you. Last night, Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, was here in Washington, D.C., gave a interesting speech. We can go further into it, but I just wanted to get your initial reaction to what you saw last night.
Mr. Milikowski, man. Mr. Milikowski is back. He comes here, he gives a speech every so often. I'm hearing a couple of things, right? So a lot of the Democrats who do receive money from AIPAC, they felt like it wasn't in their best interest to be seen on camera, just clapping it the fuck up. So I'm hearing reports of their receipts filled, where people were paid to be out there. We know for a fact that he's meeting Biden today, Mr. Milikowski. And he's meeting. For those of y'all
who do you mean? Yeah. That's everybody's with the inside jokes, man. We
Benjamin Netanyahu, when he moved
Philadelphia's
to Levant, chose to make a more Levant sounding name, a more Hebrew sounding name. So he changed his name from Benjamin Milikowski to Benjamin Netanyahu. So, just a little inside pool there. But yeah. So he's meeting Biden Thursday. He's meeting Trump Friday. Again, he's meeting Kamala at some undisclosed time. But it's an interesting thing, right? Because several things this proves, right? It proves that Democrats once again understand optics, which is what me and you have been talking about for a while. Democrats, and the problem for liberals is that they are about rhetoric over reality. So long as you word these phraseologies and ideologies within the dogmatic, expectations, you can do whatever you want. We have a genocide we have a genocide happening in Palestine right now, and all the Democrats are worried about up to and including the presumptive I say, because again, until the Democratic convention happens, it's all wishes and dreams. She's more concerned about being seen on camera with him than changing his actual policy. And with Biden, it's funny because the rumor was behind the scenes, Biden was trying to maneuver him out, right? But now you can see clearly that Netanyahu has outlasted another American that dared to push back in the slightest possible way. I'm not going to send you 1,000-pound bombs. Let's get this crazy man out of here, man. He's lost it. And he's effectively outlasted him. Right. And so we haven't heard what Kamala's explicit policy is on any of these things. And yet, right, just simply based on the presumed identity of this person, everyone's already for this. Right. People that were protesting against protesting with Black Lives Matter, saying, defund the police. Like now you're campaigning for the police, the top cop. A person that put people in California in prison for marijuana. I mean, something that's so ubiquitous to American, but especially California culture, right? And at the end of the day, she still has not overtly rejected the policies that Biden has done. She helped to implement them. She was part of the administration, right? If it falls on Biden, it falls on the vice president as well. And yet none of that critique has happened. I do find it interesting, the whole speech that Netanyahu gave, just common despot things. He still repeated the lies of October 7th. Oh, they burned
9/11s.
babies 10 9/11s, right? Because again, right, Holocaust states that Jewish life is worth more, so it's 10 times worse than what happened in 9/11, right? Um, you had that, right? Talking about, gays for Palestine is like chickens for KFC, which is a clear miss because you understand the American market, man. Nobody wants to go to KFC. That's not a brand you want to talk about. But also the fact that gay marriage is also not legal in Israel, right? So like there's no pushback at all on any of this. Like
We're always
it's
talking
just
about a theocracy and like what you like. There's not even inter-religious marriage in Israel. I mean, they recognize it when you're outside and you come to their
right.
country, but it while you're there, that's not even allowed. So
Yeah. So
yeah, there was a lot of things that were said yesterday, and we could laugh about some of the just unreality that we saw from Philadelphia's own Benjamin Netanyahu. But he said a lot of very scary things. He said yesterday, give us the tools faster and we'll finish the job faster.
what is the job?
We heard this from
it's the eradication of the Palestinian people.
But what was interesting to me was that was the exact rhetoric that Trump used during the debates. So
it felt like a Trump rally, didn't it?
Yeah, with someone who's much better than Donald Trump. Again, we realize that Benjamin Netanyahu is a horrible person, but a incredibly shrewd,
one of the most skilled politicians of our lifetime. Absolutely, unquestionably.
And it just was interesting to see that. Again, we hear a lot like, oh, remember when seems like forever ago when Donnie J was shot at, and we heard people saying like there's no violence.
Which, by the way, the FBI is still not convinced, right? Like there's been no medical reports, right? I mean, look, man, it's not for nothing, but this man was in the WWE, okay? They blade in the WWE, I mean, I'm not here to say what happened one way or the other, but I am here to say it's a matter of fact. The FBI is not certain that a bullet hit this man.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's tough to try to talk about the news because there are so many, we were, and I think still big Elden Ring fans. I'm going to try to use this metaphor as best as I can. But the From Software games have a tendency to be very vague with their storytelling. And it's something that we love about it. And they had a recent DLC. A DLC is extra content for a game, usually a popular game. And, they always say like, well, it asks more questions than it answers. And that seems like what American politics is now. Every time we try to get an answer, we're just left with more questions. But at the end of the day, we had Benjamin Netanyahu, who is committing a G-side, and it will do so for the foreseeable future, say, we're going to get the tool, give us the tools faster and we'll finish the job faster. And everybody stood up and applauded. And that is the state of the United States right now. And it's interesting, how quickly you mentioned Kamala, because again, there was a meme I showed you this morning from one of those Democratic pages where it was like the difference between, these very remedial, overly basic comparisons. And it had Kamala on one side and Donald Trump on the other. And it had a long list of things that Donald Trump had done, and all of those things. And then Kamala's side, it just had pro-police and Palestinian G-side. And the person was like, well, I guess there's no difference, huh? How come, and I'm going to ask you this question, and I want you to give me a serious answer, because liberalism is a cancer here, okay? How is it okay to just say, and who talks about this, Matt Sadia, when he talks about the crisis at the border? It's not a side issue. G-side is not, the second or third thing on this. It's number one for me. And liberals seem to do this thing where they are always just like, well, yes, that's bad, but blah, blah, blah. Why is that? What is wrong with them?
It's the straight up poison. We've talked about this several times. It's the poison of harm reduction in that ideology. Well, I just want to handle the good that I can, right? As opposed to having anti-oppression as your framework, right? Because you just can see there's so much I can't do anything about. But
I can I can excuse G-Side, but I draw the line at Project 2025.
I mean, that's
It's a
really
tweet
where
right
we're
there.
at right now, you know.
Yeah.
And the thing that's funny to me, right, as a Black person that grew up in the hood in America, right, we all remember that feeling when you're watching Boys in the Hood and you see the black cop get out and, you know, he's talking to Lawrence Fishburne and he's like, something wrong. And he's like, yeah, brother. Like, that's my feeling watching Rashida Tlaib. Like, you trying to get your little screen bite, but you was rolling with these dudes. You the black cop right now. You out there trying to virtue signal like you somehow better, and you really not, baby girl. You still, how is it anybody in the squad? How can you be cool with those people, right? I mean, the fact that you have people in the squad voting to arm Israel right now, but y'all all still see that's where it's not intellectual for me. That's not, we're talking about something that's life and death for women, for children, for people that just want to have a state associated with them. And as a Black person, I deeply, deeply relate with that feeling, that instinctual feeling. I think, again, that's why, like, in the Black community, there is a conversation that's happening. It's not a loud conversation, but it is real conversation about what constitutes Blackness, right? Like a Jamaican Indian can ascribe to Blackness, but you do have a different cultural legacy. You have a legacy that ties back to India, the largest country in the world by way of population. You have a tie to Jamaica, right? A proud culture with its own rights and rules and culture, right? Blackness in America is something different. It is a culture that is different. Lots of things fit into it, and you know, it's accepting and welcoming to many things because it's so used to being disrespected, right? But it's still a unique and different culture, right? And that is a conversation that is happening. So when you're looking at someone like that, it creates these tensions that, again, right, it's the tensions that are not going to allow, even, again, assuming that Kamala gets the stick, that are going to move her forward, because you don't have that cohesiveness that was around a Barack, even though those same questions could be asked about his Blackness. I don't think the conversations in the Black community were loud enough yet. They're much louder now. You know what I'm saying? And then when you look at their what is your legacy? You were a prosecutor, right? And you have been helping Biden, who is, let's be honest, despised by most young people. They despise or they pity Joe Biden. No one loves him. No one loves him. You compare and contrast that with JD Vance, where people admire him, right? Or they loathe him, right? But you do have both of those paradigms. Or Trump, who, again, has reached into a messianic phase where his followers are rabidly, dogmatically behind this person. Like, you just don't have that kind of enthusiasm for Kamala yet. You have a lot of happiness that Biden is gone, right? And you tie that to, again, the politics of Israel, because this is a person who is not going to, just to compare and contrast and slightly pivot, at the same time that Mr. Malikowski, Netanyahu, is in the United States and giving speeches, 14 different factions of Palestinian resistance are in Beijing right now talking about what Palestinian statehood looks like, right? Why wasn't the White House holding this? Why wasn't, right? You understand what a slam dunk this would have been for this to be the first act that Kamala would host? I'm going to sit all the Palestinians down, and I just want to hear the Palestinian perspective of what statehood looks like for them and what are the differences between these movements without the rhetoric, right? Oh my God, Hamas, are terrorists, right? Moving away from all of the plot points and the slogans, right? Just sitting down with these movements and finding out, what do you want to see for a Palestine? What does that look like for you? Sitting down with Fatah, asking them, what do you want to see? What does that look like to you? America is incapable of doing that. That doesn't change, whether you're talking about a Democrat or whether you're talking about a Republican, because that would be something that would be considered unforgivable to someone like Bibi Netanyahu, who we know for a fact holds grudges and outlasts politicians and runs an APAC that brags about ousting Americans that don't toe the line.
When we watched, or you, we read, you had read it a couple times, but you watched me in 1984, and I just want to say that part of the book that was really important and impactful for me and explained a lot is, we call it endless wars now. The endless wars, and it seems as if we have a country that can only the whole idea that Russia is a country disguised as or Saudi Arabia is a country disguised as a gas station, or
and they would say that about Russia back in the day in the 90s.
Yeah, and then the United States is just a defense contractor, with the country name surrounding it, and it always seems like the United States is escalating. I mean, it is, and we have a total opposite here. We have in Washington D.C. a person who will forever be infamous as a true villain of history, getting standing ovations.
55.
Those are better than Zelensky numbers, man.
Yeah, I mean you have the chief of the CNN, right, who's saying, "Wow, this feels like a State of the Union address." That's not the flex you think it is, man.
But in a lot of ways, it is. I mean, I think that's a great point. Like AIPAC and the Israeli lobby and the religious and ideological hawks, to them, that was the State of the Union, because that is the United States is so enraptured and so tied in with Israel. We saw Joe Biden, current president, right? I mean, everyone's talking about him like he's not around, but he's supposedly the current president.
Right.
Even though he's starting to delegate things off to Biden or whatever. But I mean,
you mean Blinken.
Blinken, right? Yeah. I mean, we didn't even talk about that, but he's out here delegating things to Blinken. To your point about Kamala not delegating things to Kamala, so I just, the United States is provoking war and China is brokering peace. Is that too basic a statement?
No, I mean, that's they're doing things that people said couldn't be done. We talked earlier this year how they brought rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran, who had been at ideological loggerheads since the splitting of Sunni and Shia Islam. I mean, I cannot understate the importance, the magnitude of such a rapprochement. And get Israel out of the way, and you would have had, just with the Palestinians alone, there would have been a bloodbath, because there is a fight for the heart of what the Palestinian people want and who really represents them, right? If Israel didn't have anything to do with this, there would be huge, it would be like Sudan, right? When you're talking about these 14 different factions and who wants to rule, who deserves to rule, who speaks for the people, the fact that China was able to bring these people in without the pretext of, oh my God, you're on an American watch list, and saying, you guys represent a certain subset of the population. We're going to sit you down and we're going to talk. We're going to talk like adults. We're going to talk like people who want to create a country, and tell me what your vision looks like, right? And then you have 14 different factions describing what their vision looks like. You cannot help but be a little bit influenced by these other people. You make peace with your enemies. You don't make peace with your friends. And so it starts with talking. And this is something that the Americans have really not been great at since, I think you would have to go back to Hillary Clinton as the Secretary of State. Because say what you want to say about the Bush administration, but Colin Powell was actually a really good diplomat. He actually went around the world. He talked to people. I would say the American-Russian relationship was the best it's been in probably 50 years under Bush, right? Again, horrible person. But we have to look at the reality of what was happening on the ground when these people served. There was a stark change of diplomacy when Hillary Clinton came in as the Secretary of State, and John Kerry didn't help. John Kerry, following that, was saying pretty much with that bellicose rhetoric, the only people that matter to talk to are Europeans, and pretty much they need to do what we tell them to do. Right? There isn't that real. Meanwhile, you have Wang Yi sitting down as who he would be the Collery of the American what's his name, the Blinken, right? He's the foreign minister for China. So that's who Wang Yi is, and he's sitting down, right? Maybe the second most important country in the world as far as military, economics, and all of that, sitting down with a nation that isn't even in the top 100 for GDP, and making that a mission to sit down and really find out, what that looks like. That's the difference between the American method right now and the Chinese method, and they've done this over and over again. You can see then how it looks like, though, at one point Ukraine was going to be the flashpoint that could lead us to World War III. It's easier to do this with Israel when you have Mr. Malachowski saying, "Give us the tools and we'll do the job," and no Democrat stepping up to be like, "This is wrong." We unequivocally, I mean, to be fair, Bernie gave a speech, but he does still vote for these appropriations packages. And Bernie gives great speeches, but do not look at his voting record at all, or you'll be completely demystified about who this man is, right? But he did give that speech. But other than that, you don't see a condemnation of this man whose country has been found guilty of crimes against humanity by the International Court of Justice, by this man who has outstanding warrants from the International Criminal Court. So not just a criminal nation, but a criminal leader. And again, if you want to say these things are just international posturing, I will take you back to the Israeli courts themselves, who also have outstanding verdicts against Bibi Netanyahu. So, I mean, this man got warrants out the fucking wazoo.
Got warrants in his own country. That's the thing. I mean, he got international warrants. He got warrants in his own country. I mean, damn. Let me see that warrant. That's him. Let me see that warrant. I want to read you this and just give you a reaction, and we can get out of here. But this was something that was really poignant. We had to open up a second account on Instagram because it's Instagrams. It's Meta. I mean, you can't talk about sex. You can't talk about guns. And you can't talk about drugs. And you can't talk about politics, even though those are the things that I love the most. I just want to read this to you because this is something that I think speaks to the Kamala point. And, the idea of having political and ideological principles and sticking to them is foreign to many because they don't organize within neighborhoods and communities, something Keita is always talking to us about. They wait 4 years to choose between one imperialist or another and assume the rest of us also do nothing in between. And I think that is really sort of the description of many of these liberals. They pop out every election cycle, wave their finger and tell you what to do. But we cover this every day. And you would think that at some point with the Republican nominee getting shot towards and the Democratic current president, bowing out from pressure to his own party because they can't raise enough money to lace their pockets. And this is the United States, and this is what we have to contend with. And we always hear people say things like, "Well, what would y'all do? And what would you do?" And that's like, to your point, this is pretty much what we can do. It was bad then, and it's worse now. I mean, you're talking about Colin Powell and things like that. I mean, we're basically reusing that same rhetoric because, you kind of can't do it better than that. Do you have any more thoughts about either of these things before we get out of here? I want to give a shout out to the podcast listeners. Much love to y'all. We got some new Patreons, and I want to give a shout out to our Patreon members. They're holding us down. You can check our information. It will always be in the description. I usually have it up here, and of course, it's taking forever to load. But we did get to. So let's see here. Give me a second. I always do this when you don't have it up. Okay, well I can't read them. But much love to them. Look, I mean, it's like, look at it. Look at this error.
Yeah, wow.
Come on, can we just get some love here?
Technology. Y'all know who you are. You know what I'm saying? We love you. You know what I'm saying? We shout you out whenever we can. This is what I will say. There are a lot of people out there putting clout on the line to make a stand. I was never a person that really gave much about clout. You know what I'm saying? The homies get on me about this all the time. You know, oh, Brett, big up what you do, talk about what you do, because people don't really care what you say. They only care. There's a reason why I say something, Saul say something, and then Saul's goes viral, right? I mean, and it's no disrespect to the men. Y'all are gonna lose clout by making these hard stands, and you're doing it. And I respect that so much, man, because this is about lives. This is not about perceived reputation. This is about real lives. You know, this is not about having a superior intellectual argument. I leave that to liberals. Y'all go and master that rhetoric. But over here, anti-oppression methodology is what we on, not harm reduction. Because harm reduction says this amount of life loss is okay. This amount of harm is okay. We do the best that we can. We want to see all that harm go away. We want to imagine a world where people are not massacred for one nation.
You did such a good job filling in the time. I appreciate you. I did get it up. A big shout out to Dubsy22, Nicole, Jay Gillard 94, No Ground, Robbie, Paula, Lissa, Lauren, Suzette, and Dennis. You can be a member as well. You can get one of these. Well, these are the old school ones. We got some new ones in there too. But you're looking good there, my friend, as always.
It's a curse. It's such a burden.
Thanks to all. Subscribe, like, all those good things. I'm Amin TMK for Mojo Lil Tanky Sumler. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' in the city left.